Hello and welcome to this video and to July's book review. I am leaving this a bit late. It is the 30th of July, but I really wanted to finish my last book before I filmed it, but it is coming out on Wednesday the 2nd of August, so I really do need to get a wriggle on. I'm also on very limited amount of battery, so I'm hoping that I talk quickly and I can do it within this battery's life. And I think I'm going to manage that because basically I've read from one author this month. I am very much in my Neal Shusterman era. So although I have 5 books here to talk to you about, 3 of them are one series which I will just talk to you about as a set. And the chunky one, the Toll, is the one that I finished this morning. I basically just sat and read the last 100 pages all in one go so that I could get this filmed today. Reading speed is still not really up there. I'm not sure reading all of the same author and all of the same sort of genres helped that, but we went with it and we managed it. So I'm not going to beat around the bush, and I'm going to start with the last book, or the first book I finished in June, July, as you know, was The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman. I enjoyed this. Not quite as much as the Thursday Murder Club, which, if you don't know the premise, we're set in a retirement village with a group of friends that meet every Thursday to look over crimes and things like that. In the first one, there's a murder on their retirement village, so they get involved in solving it. In this one, we're following like a diamond robbery, sort of heist kind of thing. So the topic wasn't quite my favourite. I preferred the murder storyline, but the diamond robbery did lead to its own twists and turns. But I enjoyed being back with the gang. Joyce in particular is still my favourite. She does make me laugh a lot, but we did get some character development for some of those characters that we maybe didn't meet quite as well in the first book. So Ron and Ibrahim get a little bit more in this book, along with some of the police officers whose names have completely escaped me because I literally finished this on the 1st of July. I would say it is worth at least recapping the first book before going into this one, because there were some stuff that I just didn't remember from the Thursday Murder Club that they just sort of mentioned in this, slightly off the cuff, assuming that it was remembered, and I didn't, so I had to then go back, look it up so that it actually made sense. But overall, it was an easy read. It was fun, and I have, just off screen, I have the third one, which if you saw my book haul, you know that I picked that one up. So look forward to delving back into the gang at some point. We then move into the Neal Shusterman era, and I started of his books with Dry, which is by Neal Shusterman, but also his son Jarrod Shusterman. This was for my Buzzwordathon prompt, which was to read a book with weather in the title, so I thought Dry was quite a good understanding and interpretation of that prompt. And this is a dystopian, like a near dystopian, so we're following our characters who live in California as the water runs out. So all the reservoirs, all the rivers, everything just runs dry, and we are following a week of them without any water and seeing what happens to society, even though a small part of society, as that happens. This book, well, first of all, I would never have survived, that's for sure. I would never have survived without water. I mean, I literally have a bottle right next to me. I pretty much only drink water, so yeah. This was written pre-pandemic, but there are a lot of scenes in this, panic buying, all of that kind of stuff, in this that happened with the COVID-19 pandemic, which was interesting that it happens, that's how people actually react. And our main characters, Alicia, and she meets like a group of people that she's with, they can't catch a break. There are so many things in this where I'm like, oh, another? I mean, I'm guessing that probably is what it would be like if you're really searching for things and doing that. But it did feel a little bit one event after another, and you're just like, I'm not sure that would really happen, but there we go. So I found this an interesting concept. It was really interesting to look at how different people would approach such a crisis. So in this, we've got preppers, we've got people that are burying their heads in the sand, people that are trusting of the government, people that are not trusting of the government. We've got all sorts of approaches looked at in this, which was really interesting. But I would say that there are some points that could be expanded on, and then there are some bits that I think could have just been removed and we didn't need. Overall, I enjoyed Dry. There's parts of it that made me doubt things, and I wasn't quite sure at points what was essentially the point of the story. There were parts where I was like, well, surely somewhere else in the country would offer support, but maybe the infrastructure just wasn't there to do so. I don't know, that wasn't really explored or expanded very well as to why it took so long for aid to get into that California region. So yeah, interesting look. I do like a dystopian. I don't often read near dystopians, so things that could genuinely happen in this day and age. So it was nice to do that. But again, there were just some flaws and some sort of pacing issues in it that made me question it a little bit. So that is Dry by both Neal and Jarrod Shusterman. Then, as I said earlier, for the rest of the month, I was reading The Ark of Scythe, which my brother's going to get upset with because I'm not pronouncing it right, but it's how I'm pronouncing it because it's easier for my tongue. So in this, the first book is Scythe. We are following Citra and Rowan, who are chosen to be apprentice scythes, and scythes are people, the only people that are able to kill, essentially. We're in again, dystopian land. This one is much further away, where human beings can't die anymore. We've got rid of everything that would kill us, and even when things happen, people jump off buildings, etc. I mean, there's a whole term for it, it's called splatting. Even when that happens, they then get taken to centres to be revived. So you're only dead-ish, you're not actually dead unless you are gleaned by a scythe. So this follows them in their apprenticeship, and then obviously we have Thunderhead and the Toll, which move on from that story, and we continue. There's a whole thread running through about new guard and old guard, and how scythes should be gleaning, and what's ethical, and what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing. So that's a whole thread running through this. Again, similar to Dry, I found it a very interesting concept, but there were definitely, and I can't hold them all up, so we'll just hold the first. There are definitely things in this series that were really good. There were some really good twists and some really things that did make me go, oh wow, I wasn't expecting that at all. But then there were chunks of it where I was like, why are we reading this? I really don't care. So the pacing of this series is questionable, and as you can see, the last book, so we get thicker, and then the last book is like 600 odd pages, and for at least the first 300 pages of this book, we are not following the characters that you want to follow. This is going to be very difficult for me to talk about without giving loads of spoilers, but I'm going to try my best. One of the things that I particularly enjoyed was that all the scythes are named after famous people from the mortal age, so people from now. Some of them I did know, so we had people like Carlo, so Frida Kahlo, we had Nelson Mandela, Marie Curie, and then there were people that I just didn't know. So some of the main scythes in the series are, so like their mentor is Scythe Faraday. I don't know who is Michael Faraday, and stuff like that. So interesting to see which people were chosen and also which parts of life and society are brought into it, because there are talks of building a wall at one point, and this series was all written around the time that Donald Trump was president. So that kind of thing is brought in. And in general, the society is an interesting one. I enjoyed some of the politics of it, which is common in these sort of dystopian fantasies, that you get quite an element of politics and that world building, which was interesting, and it was fun to see how a life without death and without illness and that kind of stuff could come about. But I did just find in all of these books that there were just too many periods of lull that I didn't care about. I mean, for this one we're following storylines that eventually come together and important, but I don't need to read that for 350 pages. I want to know what's happening to the characters that I want to know what's happening to. So my experience with the Arc of Scythe, overall I enjoyed it. I'm not sure I will revisit, but I'm going to hold on to them for now just in case. I do think they're good and they're well written, but I prefer things like The Hunger Games and that to this series, just because the pacing is so much better. But there's a lot to say in this series that I did enjoy. So, as I said, I thought this would be a quick one, and it was, which I'm glad about because my battery's still going, and you're probably glad about because sometimes I can talk about books for a very long time. So my plan for August, I don't know if you can see these, was to read the Cursebreaker, the end of the Cursebreaker series, which I'm going to do. But I think I need a bit of a palette cleanser in between the Arc of Scythe series and the Cursebreaker series, because they're nowhere near the same, but they're in the same sort of genre and things like that. So we're going to have a short palette cleanser, and then we're going to move on to the Cursebreaker series. But you'll see that at the beginning of September at some point, or the end of August. I don't know where the Wednesday for the book review falls this time. So my battery is literally about to die, so if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!